one of the first for the theater, and also was our literary arts coordinator, as well as a special friend. And it means a lot to have everyone here and celebrating this with us. Today, we're going to share some stories about Elissa and read some of her poetry, have some of her students read some of their poetry as well, and then gather at the south end, and it looks like throughout the whole theater, and have some light appetizers and share longer memories as well. So with that, let's start with one of her students, Jim Swanson, who's going to come up and read something for us. Hi, Jim.
Oh my gosh. It's only about 1,900 pages. So.
Want to take your mask?
I just put a cough drop in. So, I just was one of Elissa's students, and here I go already. You know, it saved me. It saved me to find somebody who would encourage us to write and to share that side of ourselves. And I happen to be the most brilliant writer of all time. Thank you. You know already. So this is just from my first year with her, and I just wrote, a lot of my stuff is too dark for a funeral. So I brought something that's a little bit lighter. If you're a bird person, all of these things are true. It's called If You Must. Nice day, a hummingbird says as she circles the goldfinch. You got a name? Goldfinch is quiet, looks up. She's shiny and green. He sits on a lilac branch, letting the cool breeze tuck his chest feathers. I said, nice day, she says. Nice enough, he finally says. It's been a long day for foraging seeds. It's spring and the dried fallen morsels he enjoys are long gone. I'm looking for blooms, she says. Apple blooms and lilac blooms don't do much for me. A big bunch of lilacs is like drinking perfume. I love the honeysuckle. Yeah, odd time of year, he says. Hate the downpours, snow last week. You're telling me, she says. I don't have nearly the feathers you do. I got very cold. Spent a lot of time flying to keep the ticker going. Mind if I perch? Well, if you must. This is serious, no? Elissa was always the one voice in class laughing. Low down new bunnies are eating dandelion buds. Look at those fat things down there, she says. They eat like that, and they'll never be able to fly. The goldfinch thinks this hummingbird is not too bright. They can fly, they just choose not to. What's so great about flying anyway? What's your name? The hummingbird says. Joe. I'm Carla, nice to meet you. You too, I guess, he says, aware that he is not looking at her when he talks. So she says, this is kind of embarrassing. I've been around here for a week. I've been building my nest very carefully. It's really cute. So says Joe, well, where are all the males? I'm here every year. This year, nothing. I don't know, Joe says. Usually I got 2 or 3 out there now making big dives from the clouds trying to take my breath away. She darts and bobs around him. Then there's Kenneth. Kenneth? He's a big old dragonfly. Just because we both can hover, he thinks we got something in common. Well, that's true, Joe says. He's obviously got good taste, got eyes all over his head. I don't even know which one to look into when he talks to me. Well, says Joe, he doesn't know what to say. Okay, well, getting back to the birds, do you think it's neat? Am I not pretty enough? Joe waits a minute and cocks his head to the side, considering her appearance. There isn't a bird alive that doesn't have a crush on a hummingbird. Petite, energetic, the way their feathers prism in the light. No, you're very pretty, he said, really. You don't have to say that. You are, look at you. Thanks, I needed that, she says. She leaps into the air and circles Joe. catching delicious mosquitoes in a gnat for seasoning in her long beak. Hey, Joe says, I saw you eat a couple of bugs. I thought you were into nectar. Oh, nectar's just for energy. Keeps my wings beating, but I love my bugs. Bugs are for my bones, she says, flying around him. Why? What do you like? Oh, me? Strictly vegetarian, seed mostly, maybe a flower, bud now and then for roughage, that sort of thing. I hate seeds, Carla says. I have to have my protein. There's protein in seeds, Joe said. Who have you been listening to? Carla considered this. Maybe he's right, but she isn't going to change. What about you, Joe? Got a honey someplace? Sitting on a nest waiting for you to bring home a seed supper? That's funny. I'm a goldfinch. We don't do that till late summer. But you got a girl, right? Joe doesn't answer. She lands next to him again. Joe, she says, but he's quiet. The question sends his mind to another place. He's picking seeds from a cornflower with Becca. They've been together for a long time. A large fur creature leaps up from the garden floor and takes her in his claw, hops Becca into his mouth and bounds away. Joe chases them, singing wildly, but there's nothing he can do. The creature goes under the lower spread of a pine tree and he loses them both like that. She's gone. Joe, she says again. He looks up. I did have her. She's gone. Some ground creature grabbed her, killed her. When? 3 seasons ago. I'm so sorry. Yeah, well, doesn't help when you got one chance to build a life together. One girl and we're done. Kids, she asked. Sure, 15 or 16 of them. But you know how that is. Once they leave the nest, hardly ever seen. I was a good provider too, plenty of seeds on the table. Well, what about someone new? Well, we don't do that, not our way. Besides, who wants an old bird like me? Carla stares at him. His yellow and black colors are still strong. His feathers are preened and neat. She doesn't know why, but her heart is running at flight speed, 1,000 beats a minute. He hears her heart and he looks at her. Sitting side by side, her black eye looks directly into his. Joe, she says, I think you're handsome. Joe is surprised. He hops to a higher branch, then returns. Sorry, Carla, it can't be done. We aren't like that. I know, but we can just hang out, she says. And do what? Talk, I wouldn't mind a little warmth at night until summer sets in. Then what? He asks. He thinks for a moment. You go south? I do, but I can never keep up with you, he says. That's true. We can meet somewhere. Where? Mexico. Whoa, hold up. You go all the way to Mexico, he says. CC, she says. Why so far? I don't know. Why do we do anything? It's our path, she says. Well, maybe I could meet you there, he says. Have you ever been to Mexico? He had never been to Mexico. Perhaps it's time. I have to tell you something, he says. What? When I molt in the fall, all this yellow goes away. Then what? Olive brown. I'm olive brown. Not a problem, she says. I thought you were going to say pink. As Joe is speaking, Carla is taking tiny steps along the branch, moving closer to him. Finally, their feathers are touching. He's not sure what to do. Then, as if it was in his makeup, he puts his big wing over her and pulls her in. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it is strangely appropriate. Let's next have Wes. Did you come? Now for something completely different. That was Jim's story from, he said it was the first class that he took with Elissa. And this was the last thing that I wrote for the last class that I was in with Elissa. She gave us a prompt each week that as a poet, typically wasn't consisting of
complete sentences or punctuation. A lot of times it was sort of open to interpretation what her prompt was all about, which gave the writers a lot of freedom to sort of experiment and do whatever you wanted to. And this last assignment, she handed out some pages from a children's book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, and asked us to write something. She gave us a number of sentences and she wanted us to sort of fill in the blank. So it was, if at first you don't succeed, blank. We can only see our outsides, but blank. So much blank we need to look after. We often wait for kindness, but blank. And I think everyone is just trying to blank. Well, I looked at that and I was completely baffled. And as it was, I only followed her prompts about 50% of the time anyway. Just it happened to be that during that week, about 5 days before that class, I had lost a third in a row, or third of the season. I lost a high school friend to COVID. He had been in the hospital for 3 weeks and passed away. So I was affected by that. And I knew that Elissa was sick, but like most of us, I think I didn't know how sick she was. So I took what her last assignment was and tried to put some of the thoughts in there, but they're in there in a different sort of way. And so this is what I wrote, and I call it soliloquy. Everybody fails. From our first mule and puke on Shakespeare's stage to the rejection of an invitation to the 6th grade dance, or our first D in freshman calculus, to those many times we disappoint our children, we fail. Nevertheless, we try again with often indecipherable intentions and inscrutable results. We blunder into success. We see ourselves and those around us, longing for some connection that ties us to them, hoping for some lasting kindness that too often passes us by. And so we reach again for the next opportunity with hope that memories fade and feel and free us to always keep moving forward. Early on, we seek what everyone tries to achieve. We are told that love conquers all, and yet often we find that love itself is all too easily vanquished by our betrayals. When we were young, we fall to the arrogant illusion of immortality. But with each turn of the wheel, we see evidence of the insolence of that lie. With an incremental awareness of age and loss, our colors begin to gray. With a newfound knowledge, we recognize that, like a good short story, our lives, part comedy, part tragedy, have an arc and an inevitable closure. A priest, a bartender, or a therapist, we look for someone to help guide us through the reconciliation of inner and outer self, to help us construct the plausible myth that informs our lives. And upon the conclusion of that introspection comes the only acceptable realization that we have all led very rich lives.
Thank you. It's interesting to and wonderful to get the different perspectives that I didn't experience with Elissa working here. But hearing from your points of view, that's moving. Next, we're going to have Jesse. Oh, just bring. So Lucas is going to come up and say a few words.
Just want to say I'm so grateful that all of you guys showed up. I'm really touched. I didn't expect as many people to be here. Is this good? Great. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. It means so much for you all to be here. Okay. My mom was 62 years old. Even though she died too young, she did everything she could to make the most of her life. When she wanted something, she didn't wait around for a lucky break. When her experience at Southwest High School got a bit rough, She didn't just sit and hope it would get better. No, she went to the principal and convinced him that he needed to let her go to a different school. Otherwise, he would be in violation of Brown v. Board of Education. The following year, she was walking the halls of Central High School, blessing her new peers with her presence. When she was trying to bring me into the world, her body wouldn't cooperate, and she was left with 3 miscarriages. Did she give up then? See for yourself. A week before she died, she told me that her sickness was getting her down. That wouldn't do, so she asked me to join her in an activity she'd done many times before. We each made a list of things to be grateful for. Succeeding, as she always did, it cheered her up, and at the top of her list was me, Jesse, and all of you. She also was grateful to be a teacher, a consumer of news and entertainment, a builder of theaters, and a publisher of her magnificent book, The Receiving Quilt. She knew that life passes you by unless you reach out and grab it, and she never kept her arms down. She also was the most genuine person I've ever known. She had many troubles throughout her life, but insecurity wasn't one of them. She was never afraid to look silly or say the thing that everyone was keeping inside. I'll admit, sometimes it made her difficult to be around, but she was always fully herself, and that's something only a very special few can say. She always loved the people around her deeply and genuinely. She lived to be a mother, an aunt, a friend. She was damn good at it. She never missed an opportunity to tell me, Jesse, or Richie that she loved us. In one of her final moments, when words and body were hard to find, she reached out, grabbed my chin, looked me in the eyes, and said with a huge smile, "I love you, Lucas." I've heard those words from her a million times, but I'll never forget that moment. She loved all of you too. Carry around a piece of that love. Let it remind you that life is a gift that shouldn't be wasted or taken for granted. Be grateful, and most of all, follow her example and love with everything you've got.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here. And Luke's older brother, Elissa's son. Thanks so much for Zephyr for having us on the set of Clue, which opened last night. And how long was it? How long does Clue run?
Oh, till for the next 2 weeks.
The 21st, so do come back. Our mom loved the Zephyr. She really loved spending her time here. For her, this theater represented all the things that Lucas mentioned that were important to her. It brought people together for theater, music, art, poetry. It involved lots of detailed organizing, getting everyone on the same team. It was also a pretty thinly veiled plan to get me to move back here and be an actor in Minnesota. I've really missed her these past 2 weeks. I've missed talking to her on the phone on Saturdays on the Sabbath, a habit that we only made happen this year, not knowing how little time she had left. I miss running lines with her for plays and auditions and making suggestions for better dialogue. I miss her telling me that it was good to cry when she was sick and I was feeling overwhelmed. I've also felt really proud of her. I'm proud of her work as a journalist, editor, and teacher, her dedication as a student, her fierce loyalty as a friend, aunt, and mom. I'm proud of her lifelong bravery and tenacity, battling against frustrating and painful physical ailments and difficult depressions, but never giving in, always searching for an answer. she's one of the most determined people I've ever met. Came out on the surface in sometimes odd and enigmatic and occasionally frustrating ways, but it was a determination that went all the way down through her heart and soul and cesarean scar and arthritic knee, all the way into the earth itself, leaving its distinct mark wherever she likely walked. It was a determination that helped build this theater from the ground up, that planned block parties and literary readings and political campaigns. It was this determination that made a lifetime of writing poetry culminate in a book that came out just a few weeks before her death, but with enough time to read and celebrate and to define her own story. It was this determination that raised me and Lucas, that gave so much to her nephew, Richie. This determination that taught and continues to teach us how to be our true selves. These past 2 months since the diagnosis were really hard, and so many of you were there and helped, and she felt that love, and it made her very, very happy and brought us respite. So thank you. I just want to share the story of when she died. I kind of I'll script this part a bit, but you know, she said that many times to me and Lucas, that at the end she wanted to be the two of us. And she said it sometimes when she was scared and maybe kind of looking at that fear and being honest about what she needed. And in the final few days, she was slowly becoming less responsive and sleeping more and breathing slower with these long kind of scary pauses between breaths. And Lucas and I kept asking nurses what it would look like, how we would know when we were close, and we wanted to fulfill this wish of hers, but we didn't know what the end looked like. At one point, I Googled around kind of looking for clues on the internet, and I found this one thing that wasn't in the literature that you were given, but it was that in the last few hours of life, there's a slight kind of gurgling sound in the throat, not painful, but just a gathering of fluid. It was a sign that the person was close. And a couple of days later, she was, unresponsive, and the nurses were telling us that it was likely the day. And the day went on, a lot of amazing people came that night and visited and sat with her. And people started clearing out, and it was time to go to bed. And so Lucas and I went to sleep around 11. This whole week we were both sleeping in her room with her. Lucas was in her bed with her, and I was on like a mattress on the floor. This kind of tiny room in our house. And so we had to set an alarm for 3 a.m. to drop medication into her mouth. And during that night, I went to sleep. I was very tired, and I had a dream. I had a very, very simple dream that I was in the room I was in, her with Lucas, dark, middle of the night, but instead of lying on the floor on the mattress, I was just sitting in a chair, a wheelchair that was next to her bed. And I dreamed that I was sitting there and that she was dying. And then I woke up, and I had this very strange kind of half awake, half asleep, full body kind of tingling sensation in my, very intense, not unpleasant, but really intense. And I just kind of lay there for a moment, feeling it and kind of becoming conscious and thinking about this dream and wondering if this feeling inside me was her spirit, or was her somehow this is what she was feeling at this moment. So I kind of indulged that feeling, and then about 45 seconds later, my ears start to open up into the world, and I hear this kind of very soft gurgling sound in her throat. And so I think about that, and I go, I should get up, and I kind of get up and I go sit beside her, knowing that I'd probably be there for a few hours, but I think I'm hearing this sound, and I just picked up, and so I get up and I sit down where I'm sitting in this dream I just had, and I touch her hand, and her hand is pretty cold, and but she's breathing very, very softly, and so I kind of come into consciousness more, and I started to say, Lucas, is sleeping next to her, and bug Lucas in for a few seconds, and he wakes up, and I said, I think it might be happening soon, and I turned on the light, and Lucas kind of rubs his eyes, and he takes her other hand in his. We both watched as she takes one breath in, exhales, and dies. So from when I woke up to when she passed was definitely under 2 minutes. And it's not something that I really know how to make sense of, other than this was also that determination that she had. She's very determined to make this moment happen where we could all be together for our sake as much as hers. And we were all together as a family in that moment. And inside of my relationship with Lucas, she'll always be there too. And we'll see each other in each other's faces and hear her in our stories and jokes and advice. Lucas, I love you so much. And there's no way I could have done these last couple months without you. And I couldn't imagine going forward on this journey without you by my side. Our mom was the best mom that anyone could ever ask for. And I'll think about her every day. And for that, I'm sad and I'm very grateful. And thank you for being here with us today to celebrate her life. Thanks.
Thank you both for sharing that. Let's move on to some more of our students and some of her influences on them. We'll have Paula come up.
It was one of the good people, you know.
No idea what
I was one of Elissa's writing students for 3 years, and in her classes, I began to write poetry. And I did it for a class one night because I had nothing else to write, and I'd never written poetry before, and I sucked at it, and I wasn't a poet, so the bar was very low. But in her class, I learned how to write poetry, and one of the things that gave her joy in class was when her students tried something new and got experimental. And even if it landed with a thud with the rest of our classmates, she always appreciated it. I will not be reading any poetry, but I wanted to share that with you. For one assignment in February of 2020, Elissa asked us to write about the events of one average day of our lives and walking the reader through the seemingly unremarkable details of our lives. She wanted us in part to pay attention to details as writers and to linger with them. I think she also intended for us to see how the small events of what we consider our average lives are made beautiful by our attention. The title of this piece is Commonplace. Our border collie knows the difference between the down comforter's rustle rolling me into another half hour of sleep and the thrown back snap that begins the day. Eli's brown eyes and muzzle that looks dipped in cream rise above the horizon of mattress. I hitch back from the edge and tap the space. Come on up. He throws his forelegs under the bed. This dog who has shared our home for 7 years noses my face like we've just met. He leads the way through the dining room, twice looking back to confirm that I remember my way to the kitchen pantry, behind whose magic door the kibble lives. Kneeling, I bail 3 scoops into his metal bowl as he supervises from a sit-stay. The same meal twice a day, every day. To him, it's always caviar and peeled grapes. I curl my arm into a circle through which he shoves his head. As he presses a border collie hug against my shoulder, I run a hand down his back like his mother did with her tongue in his puppy days. His eyes bathe me in hunger-fueled love. The high ritual of coffee begins. Weigh out the beans, winter solstice blend. 56 grams, not a bean more or less. While Mr. Coffee gets busy, I pull on muck boots and a Carhartt vest over flannel pajamas. Smacking the screen door free from ice's overnight grip, I open it to morning's bite. Eli, walk up. He edges forward, waits for release. Go run. Cardinals, chickadees, sparrows, and a downy woodpecker scatter ahead in his assault on fresh snow. He power slides nearly into my knees as I brush snow from the bird feeders. Their cafe is now open, breakfast served all day. We retreat to the deck. The yard now silenced of annoyances, birds return to the feeders, dropping from the trees like ripe feathered fruit. Coffee's ready. The morning's mugs of choice are favorites, bought on an anniversary trip to the North Shore. We'd packed wine, but forgot wine glasses. Wanting something more festive than motel-issue plastic cups, I remembered the name of a potter who not only took my anxious phone call, but opened the studio just for us. The mugs we chose glow coppery taconite red, one sturdier, the other more curved. Freshly poured coffee swirls in the mugs. A galaxy of cream spirals its arms to the edge of its small clay universe. Morning ripens into afternoon. Plates of chicken wings and Fritos, guacamole, and cheese dip cover the dining room table, proper fuel for the endurance event of a NASCAR afternoon. The pop of a bottle cap from Jim's cell phone alerts him to a new text message. He reads, looks up, regret furrowing his face. Our neighbor is so sorry, but her husband will not be over to watch the race after all. She found out he's cheated on her and he's gone. Down to the basement to retrieve chicken bones from the freezer. In the kitchen, I array them in a roasting pan, quarter an onion, tuck in carrots from the fall garden, pile on handfuls of fresh thyme. Half an hour in the oven to caramelize, coax out sweetness. Later today, homemade chicken noodle soup walked next door to our friend will tell her, we still love you. Afternoon chills toward twilight. The car race is weather delayed, so Jim silences the announcers who have run out of things to talk about and have nevertheless spent 3 hours talking about them. He opens the cupboard to the left of the kitchen sink, reaches in for 2 wine glasses. One in each hand, he inquires with an eyebrow. Night pauses, Spanish Grenache warming our words. Supper will wait.
And next up, right?
Well, so a little backstory first I'd like to share about Elissa. I was at a church auction and Elissa's giving heart, she donated two tickets to her class for the next semester. So for 25 bucks, I was forever entered into the world of writing through Elissa's gift to the church. What I think I need to say about that is Elissa, I watch these other writers come up. We're bound together by Elissa. We have watched each other grow through her. She's given me a voice that I will forever have. I've been able to share stories of my life with my family, and my voice has changed through Elissa's guidance and the guidance of all of our fellow students. And so for that, I really thank Elissa. That is a gift. The gift of speech, the gift of writing is a gift I will carry forever, and my family will carry my writings whether they like it or not. Elissa She encouraged me to, she said, you should be a comedian. And I've got 2 comedian things over on this side, but I'm not going to read those today because I want to share another story. She gave us a prompt every week, and for one of the prompts, it was, tell us about a time in your life where you were living through a big change. So I thought that maybe this was appropriate for today. So this is called Dipsy the One-Eyed Seer. And for this, I'm going to have to take on the persona of a horse for part of it. So when my voice changes, if it doesn't sound like a horse, just pretend like it is. So a couple of recommendations to animal lovers. First, it's kind of like having kids to have a horse. You better have a love deeper than your pockets because they are cash-sucking 900-pound leeches. I know I have a daughter, Toriana, and she has a horse. It's not a complete horse though. It's blind in one eye. Something we learned long after we made the purchase. This is my second recommendation. Do the vet checks before the purchase. Dipsy came to us with that name, Dipsy. Probably a legacy of baffling behaviors which go along with monocular vision. Dipsy turned out to be a capable hunter-jumper though. In the reins of Toriana, the 2 succeeded. In hindsight, pun intended, they succeeded well beyond what you would think possible in a sport that requires precision and vision. I'm the odd one out today on this equine excursion. Jo, my wife, loved the animals when she was young and has been fully engaged parent in our horse ownership. Now she wields an ancient straw broom, tired and warped bristles whisking into a coal shovel droppings that are as predictable as a Chinese bullet train. For the umpteenth time, and most notably the last, Toriana sprays Dipsy's flanks with the cooling wash. Assuming a human versus equine perspective, I'm not nearly as useful here. Trapped against the stable wall by a massive proboscis, nuzzling and probing me for treats and affection. Cavernous nostrils fondle my sleeve, bringing the dexterous lips inexorably toward the carrot. My right thumb unconsciously makes a slight adjustment so as not to be mistaken for a bit of vegetable. My left thumb makes a furtive gesture, wiping away an unsanctioned tear sliding down my cheek. What about the tack? Does the new owner want to buy that too? Jo accents the question with a plop of droppings into the bucket. Toriana in rhythm with the shoulder to flank brush strokes. Yeah, but I'm keeping the reins and the saddle, and I bring my helmet and boots to school too, with me. You think you can get that on the plane, or should we just mail it to you? My industrious wife ponders aloud. The carrot has disappeared, but a sonorous munching reverberates from behind the dark bulbous eye, blind but inspecting me critically. The eye of the seer. I begin to feel uneasy, the penetrating analysis boring into my character, until I'm forced to turn away and scout for additional morsels. 18 years on the planet, 14 on the back of the horse, and in a few days she will be gone. Toriana to a far-off school, Dipsy to a new owner. Toriana gives a shrug. Maybe, but I have a lot to get ready. We can see on Friday. While the horse-loving duo deftly tag teams the one-eyed seer, the compulsion urges me to rummage through the cleaning kit, where I find 3 crusty red and white peppermint candies buried in the forgotten pocket. An ear twitches in my direction at the crinkle of wrapper, bringing that moist eye of darkness to rest on me once more. It appraises me, weighing my value as a caretaker, as a father. My possession of the candy enough to set the gaping nostrils twitching anew, and perhaps raise my standing with the seer, at least for a few moments.
The candy is snatched by the lips and the puny offering sets off another round of crunching. The pulsing jaw muscles finally subside and the seer takes a slow but grand inhalation, air whooshing into nasal cavities. Then without prompting or ceremony, the seer issues her vision. Between each pronouncement, a long pause, the eye staring me into silence, forcing me to nod that I understand. You could have come more. You should have. She leaves us. She may get on the wrong horse, but it will be in the right direction. She will find her way without us. She will be back. She will bring carrots. As I nod again to acknowledge the vision, I jolt free another tear which succumbs to gravity, falling to the stable floor to mix with dust, dander, and droppings. The last peppermint is snarfed up with a lip-nabbing head gesture. As Joe dumps the bucket and Toriana repacks the grooming tools, I take the saddle down from the storage rack, ready to carry to the car. Joe, hands full of writing paraphernalia, nods to Toriana. So maybe we can go through all your gear before Friday, and when you and I come back to meet with the owner, we can bring the stuff she wants. The two of them will be back one more time. This is my last. With my free hand, I offer a few strokes just behind that eye. Bye-bye, Dipsy, I manage in a quavering voice, masked by a false chuckle. Then Toriana leads all of us out to the paddock gate, and she sets Dipsy free, who wanders out to the pasture to join her friends. I close the gate, the clasp locking securely in place, certain never to swing back, as one-directional as the flow of time. Now among her kin, I hear lips ripping grass, the rumination of fodder, and fly-induced foot stomps. Tomorrow, new grass will grow, and the creatures will leave behind the old, maybe a look back or two, migrating to new ground in hopes of being the first to discover what awaits over the rise.
So we have two more. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Donatelli. I met Elissa in 2020 when I moved here to Stillwater online from a writing class. And from that, we found out that we lived close together. So we got together a few times and I continued taking her writing courses for about a year and a half. Then she introduced me to the Zephyr. And now I've been employed at the Zephyr since June. So she's been an amazing networker and not a long time, but very dear friend. So I chose to read something from her book instead of one of my own pieces, and it's called Summer of Mine. This is one of Elissa's. You cut out on me today, had me pulling the red fall jacket over my chilly arms in July. I hate you for that. Where exactly did you go? Whose bare arm skin soaked you in like butter melting under a sunny side egg? I never had a real affair in those long, long years of marriage. Never betrayed either, quite like that. I was born in your month of July, and I know you love me for it. Innocent and warm, you quietly meet me on the deck in the back every year. You are the one I run away with. No one notices us canoe across the pond. No one knows you are mine alone. Excuse me. Thank you.
And Sue.
I rarely have the opportunity to speak out loud in public nice words about someone that I honor so much as Elissa. Elissa was a force of nature. She was smart and funny and courageous. I think I've actually called her a pit bull on more than one occasion. She could get her way on some of the most surprising things, and I was frequently in awe. I shall miss her. I've never read the poems of someone that I actually know, so for me, this is a fascinating exercise because they exude Elissa. There are 3 short ones from her book. I'll start with naming rights. She never shied away from making a point. Swinging a leg over my bike, I ride to Lake Harriet Elementary School, named after Lake Harriet, after Harriet Lovejoy Leavenworth. 2 centuries ago, Colonel Henry Leavenworth was passing through on his way to kill natives in the plains. Henry and wife Harriet lived for a time at Fort Snelling, and it was decided Harriet should have a road. Late tokens, but Confederate statues finally are falling down. Rather than bulldozing whole buildings, names are torn off of brick walls. Parking my bike in the rack, I spot my blonde boy, 6 years old, arms in flight, catching the sun, on the school lawn, like he owns the place. From the floor to the roof. Mom likes to sit on the floor below the dining room table, leaning into the warm heat vent. A cigarette and phone cord unravel up her arm to her smoky blue mouth. Sometimes she rises to the piano bench. We're Jewish, but she can make handle ring church bells out of our little house. Sometimes Mom and I sit together on the plain, flat roof of our garage in summer. Nothing is better. We watch the neighbors walking below us and laugh. And lastly, rear view mirror. Parked at the lake to sip the scent of summer, I lean my head out the window, and the top of my mother, short waves of brown and gray, shows up in the mirror, unattached to the eyes of death. I hold myself still, not to startle her away. When I pull my head back in, I find her small hands face up in my lap. Thank you.
And now we have 2 family members that are going to give some of their perspective. I will start with Pat.
Oh, good to see you. Who's here? Look, this Elissa is so happy. Did anyone see the rainbow coming here? So that's something. Right over the floor. I'm not really going to give a perspective, so I'll just read one written by others. So that's okay. I've known Elissa, 40-some years. I'm really miss her. And so when I realized that that was going to be coming, that missing sooner than later, I do what I do when loss comes my way, and that is go to poetry. It's the only thing that really holds me when I'm in grief or in anticipating grief. So I gather my forces. So I'm going to read from, not from Elissa, but from 2 other poets who are in the what's the blessed company of poets to which Elissa belongs. The first one is Mary Oliver, and I chose this poem because of the pond behind Elissa's house. It's so shockingly beautiful. I just can't express what it means to just look at it, let alone to know that Elissa, it held her heart and her soul and her hope and her joy and her boys and canoe. And so this is called Heron Rises from the Dark Summer Pond. So heavy is the long-necked, long-bodied heron. Always it is a surprise when her smoke-colored wings open and she turns from the thick water, from the black sticks of the summer pond, and slowly rises into the air and is gone. Then, not for the first time or the last time, I take the deep breath of happiness. And I think of how unlikely it is that death is a hole in the ground. How improbable that ascension is not possible. Though everything seems so inert, so nailed back into itself, the muskrat and his lumpy lodge, the turtle, the fallen gate. And especially it is wonderful that the summers are long, and the ponds so dark and so many, and therefore it isn't a miracle, but the common thing, this decision, this trailing of the long legs in the water, this opening up of the heavy body into a new life. See how the sudden gray-blue sheets of her wings strive toward the wind. See how the clasp of wind takes her in. And then the second one is a short one by William Stafford. And this is especially for us. Assurance. You will never be alone. You hear so deep a sound when autumn comes. Yellow pulls across the hills and thrums of the silence after the lightning before it says its names. And when the clouds wide mouth, and then the clouds wide mouth apologies. You were aimed from birth. You will never be alone. Rain will come, a gutter filled, an Amazon. Long aisles, you never heard so deep a sound. Moss on rocks and years. You turn your head, that's what the silence meant. You're not alone. The whole wide world pours down.
I'm Larry the Kirkham. This is Dad. This is first husband. I met Elissa in the summer before our senior year of college. We met at a fiction reading. Or rather, we actually met at the bar after the fiction reading. This was 40 years ago, before readings were even a thing in Minnesota. And Elissa was the only person at that event who wasn't part of the little writing room that was putting on the event. She was a poet, and she was studying journalism. And I realized right away that she had a very clear moral center. And she was fierce. She stood up for things that she believed in. She had really deep feelings and she had determination. She was not at all passive. She would do things, and she would try to change things if things weren't right. She didn't have much patience with complaining. She was like, if you don't like it, do something. In fact, she said that to us just the other night.
One of the last times I saw her, she talked about that. And at the same time, she could laugh at herself. She had this really sweet, charming little giggle that would come out when she was telling a story of herself. She would she would go, "You want to know how stupid I can be? Listen to this." And she'd tell herself, and she'd giggle, and I was totally charmed by that. And I think we all know how much she loved her two sons. Lucas, for her marriage to Kent, and Jesse, for her marriage to me. Many of her poems are about her sons, and also about a larger range of deep and caring relationships. The extended family, you are all here because of that. And so I'm going to read one of those poems from her book. This is called Four Originals. There's no neon sign sticking its neck out for big V's on University, Midway St. Paul. Just a cigarette blinking orange on and off from the lips of a bartender taking a break on the sidewalk. Black leather jacket squares my small shoulders for occasions just like this. A man aging about my pace straddles his extra weight over a bar stool. $5 cover, he says, rubber stamping the top of my wrinkled hand. I edge past pool tables, thin tops stretched over pairs of breasts, lines like apples in summer. In the back, I spot my dates, the ex and his wife. It's his wife I am drawn to in these situations. I love this wife and mother we all wish we had. Fresh basil pesto and warm brownies. Loves my son when he's under their roof. Our boy 15 steps onto the stage, bass slung low over the front of his hips, his dad's rusty hair spraying around his face, black bandana across his forehead, large black X drawn below his knuckles. No alcohol for this hand. 4 originals and 6 covers more, he told me earlier in the day as I stood outside the bathroom doorway watching him apply stiff gel into his hair, cut fresh by the Uptown Hair Police. The legal age drummer and 2 vocalists hold up their shots to toast their live debut on stage. My kid cups his hand around his invisible glass, meets their clink in the air. I glance across the table at his dad to see if he caught that, but he missed it, enjoying his survey of the scene in total. I put him back on the coffee house stage 25 years before in California. Harmonica, red spiked hair, he would sway me back and forth to music, a high, Grateful Dead head. Our son's band is loud and not bad. Van Morrison, Bob Seger, plus the originals. In the middle of the set, he gets a guitar solo. He's good. Dad tosses a grin across the table to Mom. Your son is the best musician up there, a friend also in band shouts in my ear. I take her word for it and raise my glass to his stepmom and his old man. So in the last few weeks of Elissa's life, she and I had a lot of conversation. And it was some of the more amazing and memorable conversations of my entire life. Her strength, her ability to embrace what was real and what was happening. It was profound, and she was full of gratitude. She was grateful to have lived a good, enriched life. She was immensely proud of her kids. She was proud of her marriages, proud of her book, proud of the social work she did for women and girls, proud of the work she did here at Zephyr. And she honestly didn't seem to have any regrets, nor did she seem to be holding any ill will for anyone. She was at peace, and she was great company in the end. Diana and I spent 3 nights with her in her last 10 days, and we laughed a lot, and Elissa told a lot of stories, and one morning, it happened 4 times that she would tell a story, and then she'd say, "Oh, I wrote a poem about that." And then she would open up her book and she would read it. And I was like, "Wow, yeah, you did write a poem about that. And a pretty damn good one, actually." So that's what I'm remembering. That she was full of life, right to the end, and that light lives on in her poems and in the way she affected all of us and in her children. She was a great mom, and she lives on.
We're going to have a short announcement, but before we do, I wanted to tell a story that we experienced with Elissa that shows her tenacity. One of Jesse's friends wrote a play, and Elissa introduced us and suggested we consider either producing it or reading it, and we did. We went back and forth, and COVID hit, and so it took a lot of effort. We ended up building a stage outside and doing reading of the play. And it was one of those weekends in the summer where it was extraordinarily hot. And I remember the actors on stage just dying because the stage was black. It was so hot. We eventually brought up umbrellas, and they were just doing their best to get through it. And I think it was the next day, we had the audience come. And of course, then it stormed. And a huge thunderstorm came in, and we said we're trying so hard to just live together again and enjoy art together. And so the audience got under the public chair and huddled, and I turned around, and the only person sitting out in the parking lot under a small umbrella with torrential rain coming down was Elissa. She was like, "Sam, just come and make you stop." And sure enough, it did. And we ended up being able to do it. And I have a picture of that, actually. I need to send it to the audience. It was wonderful. Determined, tenacity, gonna make this. Now, Elissa is going to make a short announcement.
Hello, I just wanted to say Elissa means the world to us as a member. She was with us from the very beginning. As Randall said, she was one of our original board members. She was a supporter of the Zephyr through absolutely everything. She was a supporter of me personally through absolutely everything. And we will never, ever forget every contribution she has made to this theater. She is very much a living, breathing part of everything we're doing here, and she will be forever. So as we sat down with our staff last week, we decided that one of the best ways we can honor her is we will be dedicating the Elissa Cottle Library as part of the effort here. And we're having a plaque made, and that will start in the south end, and as we expand to the north, we will always have that a very real and very visible part of what we're doing. It will be filled with books of art and poetry, and of course her own book and everything she loved. So we want to make sure that she's part of the fabric into eternity. Yes, she wanted to leave a legacy, and we hope we can be a very small part of that. So how wonderful to see so many people come and how many lives she had. She was truly a force. Thank you.
And before we wrap up, Jesse and Lucas are going to come up one more time, but when we finish, we will gather on the, like I said, on the south end, but we're up here. I have some light appetizers. Elissa's book of poetry, the receiving quilt is there if anyone's interested in grabbing a copy. We'd love to have you take a look. So Jesse, come up.
Thanks so much, Randy and Elissa. We're just we're gonna read the last poem in the book, the title poem, The Receiving Quilt, and we'll just kind of pass it back and forth with this mic here, which is gonna be a little clumsy.
Yes, I do.
I can see it, that's easy.
Okay, the poem is called The Receiving Quilt. Pedaling the black iron treadle of the old singer, grandmother stitched a small square quilt of colors to receive the granddaughter.
The sewing machine hangs upside down its wooden table. Its 4 narrow drawers for spools and buttons are repurposed into housing for small square Lego people who populate the world of the granddaughter's children.
How easy it is to love children, how impossible to save them all from harm, how that doesn't stop this story from speaking for them before they exist. A girl, a boy will thank their mother and father for waiting to conceive them until they are parents ready to receive them. No love is more patient, no preparation more holy.
Knock until you find a supporting wall. Conceive a welcome cup for the table. Apply gold leaf with the gentlest fingertip. Even a small jolt will fracture this fragile color of promise. Before carrying someone new, find what carries you through the hours of the world. Consider referrals.
I know someone who knows a way to beckon the soul into the body on Tuesday nights from the second floor of her duplex. How love creeps into a patchwork quilt of people sitting in a circle in her otherwise ordinary living room. How it washes your hot face, drives your car all the way home.
Feel free to get up and let's gather in the service.
She bounced back.
You're not gonna get her. You can tell, you can tell. One look. Look at my Yeah. Love to like now like
Is this Zoom still going?
Pardon me?
I think this Zoom is still going. It's recording. Should I like?
Shut her down.